meeting to order.
Yep.
We'll call the meeting to order, and we will do the Pledge of Allegiance with the Elementary South students. So, anybody for a public comment? Anybody wishes to make a public comment? No? 1, 2, 3. We'll start with Elementary South.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Jill Martin. I'm the principal at Elementary South.
I'm Christy Hunter, the assistant principal, Elementary South.
Every morning we start our day with the morning broadcast. Our fifth graders do everything from writing the script to running the cameras and creating the show. And so this morning we bring the HES news to you.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Hawthorn Elementary South Morning News.
We're on location at the Board of Education meeting for a special broadcast highlighting some of her special accomplishments this year.
I'm Olivia.
And I'm Kendar.
Today is Monday, May 22nd, 2017.
Please stand and join Miss Silver's kindergarten class sing the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This year, our Bernstein unit is centered on having the courage to soar above the line.
It takes courage to do the right thing when the others are making poor choices. So this year we have spent the year showing the courage to soar above the line.
SOAR stands for safe, on task, act responsible, and respect.
Above the line behaviors get recognized with SOAR dollars, and students are gaining courage to make good choices.
Through problem solving, students are learning the tools to stay above the line.
Let's go live to Jonathan and Tessa, who can tell you more about the SOAR program.
I soar above the line by following my classroom rules. When the whole class does, we get marble hand scoops to work for a reward.
Hi, I'm Jonathan, and I want to be a successful student, so I'm going to soar above the line. Some ways that I can soar above the line are being polite and listening.
We have the courage to try out some new teaching techniques. Teachers from our special education and ELL departments are pushing me into classrooms for co-teaching experiences.
Let's go to some students in second grade to tell us what co-teaching is.
Emily, what do you like about having two teachers in your classroom?
I feel safe and I feel confident. I get more concentrated with my work. I don't feel like... Sometimes I feel that I don't really can do this, but I can do it.
That's great. Thank you, Emily.
Hi, I'm LNG South.
Do your teachers co-teach, Jimmy?
Yes, some of my teachers co-teach. Co-teachers are friendly, nice, and they're helpful. They help me when I'm on trouble on words and also problems.
And what else do they help you do?
They help me believe in myself and get going faster and never stop.
We don't just soar above the line with our behavior. Our student achievement is soaring too.
Let's go to a few students to hear about goal setting in our soaring academics.
Hi, my name is Max, and I'm in the 5th grade. This year, every student at Hawthorn Elementary South sets an individual goal, and our oldest students set a personal goal too. In the fall, I set my goal to raise my math reading score by 4 points. This was a tough goal to meet because it was pretty high already. I also set a goal to go up 3 levels in F&P and raise my math score by 10 points. I worked with my teachers to create an action plan, focusing on checking over my work and seeing, could this work be any better? This is my action plan. I took my spring testings, and, not to brag, but I passed all 3 of my goals.
We have the courage to soar above the line, soar with our goal setting, soar with our teaching, and soar around the block.
Meet Miss Turchin and some of our SOAR rate runners to tell you about our most recent race.
Hi, my name is Miss Turchin. I'm one of the coordinators of the SOAR program. I'm here today with 2 SOAR members, Nicole and Brandon, and they're going to give you a little bit more information about the program. So, Brandon, what do you do at SOAR?
You run with friends and you see teachers you haven't seen before, and you also play like games.
Cool.
Yeah.
And Nicole, why do you like SOAR?
Because you get to run and you also get to run and talk to your friends and you also get to stay healthy.
Good. So we are preparing our SOAR running program for the 5K race this Saturday in Arlington Heights, which supports local schools, and the funding goes to the Hawthorn PTO. So we look forward to that race and future SOAR races as well.
STEMapalooza! Our entire school participated in this awesome event. Each class built an innovative, scientific, and creative device.
This embodies the STEM concept of science, technology, engineering, and math.
This prepared us to be 21st century learners.
Here are some pictures of our students in action.
Thanks for joining us.
If you'd like to see our daily news show,
Check us out on the Hawthorn Elementary South website.
So that's our morning news. It can be found on our website every single morning. It's not usually 7 minutes. It's typically 2 minutes long, but it does have pictures of everything that's going on at Elementary South daily. Do you have any questions?
No. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next one is proposed hires by Sparky.
Yep, I'll go ahead and introduce
Okay.
Abe first.
Sure.
Abe, if you want to come forward. It's my pleasure to introduce Abe Singh. He will be replacing Brad, as Brad's running off somewhere else. Real quick, it's my pleasure to recommend Abe Singh as the new Director of Finance and Business Operations. He comes to us with some private sector and public education experience. He is coming to Hawthorn with experience in large-scale construction projects of $52 million as the Vice President of the Chicago Zoological Society. Abe has been in educational finance since 2009 and has the experience, knowledge, and expertise to lead Hawthorn's business department. Abe has successfully fulfilled the job expectations and requirements during his 8 years in education business. He's built budgets, created and implemented strategic capital project plans, overseen multiple construction projects ranging from additions, renovations, building new buildings, and ongoing maintenance. So I'd like to welcome Abe to the district, and he was approved at the last board meeting, but was not here, so welcome.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you very much.
I kept it truthful. I didn't make up any stories.
Thank you. Welcome to Hawthorn.
Welcome as well.
Thanks. Is that a dinner?
Good evening again. I'm excited to bring a candidate to the Board of Education tonight. Please welcome Lauren Prescott. Lauren is going to be a social worker at Elementary South. She got her Bachelor's of Arts in Psychology at North Central College in Naperville, and then got her Master's of Arts in Social Work at Aurora University. She has worked at Cambridge Lakes Charter School in Pingree Grove, Illinois, and we are excited to steal her over to Hawthorn. So welcome, Lauren. Thank you.
Hawthorn.
Welcome. Welcome. Nice to meet you.
Welcome. Middle School South is excited to recommend Lisa Rahr. Lisa comes to us from Connection School in Bannockbrook, and she did her undergraduate at Illinois State. She'll be joining our LOP program. So welcome, Lisa.
Thank you. Thank you.
Welcome to Hawthorn.
The next presentation is by Brad. It's the 2017-2018 budget overview.
All right. Last year, Jeff had asked that towards the end of May that we give a kind of a budget overview. We aren't quite yet done with the budget. I did put some finishing touches on it. It's just not ready in presentation format, so I'm going to give you a general overview of where we're looking right now, but kind of walk you through the education funds and the process and how we split our revenue and the calendar as a kind of an overview. We're going to talk about the major school funds, give you an overview of the budget, talk about property taxes as well as our other sources of revenue, the state financial profile, and then answer any questions that you might have. Just to give you a brief overview, I know it's been a while for some of you. Some of the folks who just joined our board went through this with me last week, but just to talk about the major funds, our education fund is our largest fund by far. Most of our salaries, benefits, supplies, and materials are paid out of this fund. Operations and maintenance fund is exactly how it sounds. It goes toward the operations and maintenance of our buildings, our staff that maintains our buildings, our cleaning of our buildings, and all the supplies needed for that. Debt service fund, this is used for the principal and interest payments for our bonds on our buildings and any of our bonded projects. Transportation fund is all of our transportation costs, including our outsourcing as well as our fuel, field trips costs, charter buses, and the like. IMRF, which is the Illinois Municipal Retirement Fund, which is the retirement system that all of our non-certified staff are in, including our building secretaries, our tech staff, our instructional assistants, our building secretaries, and then Social Security. Just as a reminder, our teachers don't pay into Social Security since they're in a public pension. They don't pay into Social Security, and we don't pay Social Security on their behalf. So there's a savings to the district as if we were a private employer, we would be paying 6.2% of their salary into Social Security. So we only pay that Social Security piece on our non-certified staff. IMRF is a variable number each year. It rises and falls based upon our necessary contribution. It's in the neighborhood of 12.75%. And again, we pay that portion, and then each employee pays 4.5%, and that is a fixed portion. And that fluctuates based upon our liability, actuarial liability each year. And that's a separate fund. Capital Projects Fund is for our reserve study projects, and we pay that out of these funds. Working Cash Fund is kind of a holding fund. We have two separate funds within that. One that holds our working cash bond fund, which is the money we bonded out that we haven't used for special projects, capital reserve fund projects. And then we levy slightly in the working cash fund just to cover any needed areas in other funds if necessary throughout the year. And then the tort fund is our smallest fund. It's only about $500,000 in revenues and expenditures, and that's to cover our workers' compensation and property casualty liability as well as unemployment costs. There is a ninth fund we do not use, which is the fire safety fund. we typically levy in other funds for that. For health, life, safety, we would typically put out of capital projects fund. The budget process, we have a very detailed budget process. I mentioned we have almost 4,000 line items. Many of them are dormant and aren't used, but we break things down very granularly. We break them down by grade level. So if we have 3 teachers at first grade in Aspen, we build in their salaries for their checks and then their increases next year. We also build in their life insurance, their health insurance, all their insurances as separate line items. And so we can be pretty accurate, especially in those line items. Obviously, if there are somebody who goes on a leave halfway through the year and we have a substitute, that's going to end up saving us money in the budget typically, because especially if they take an extended leave, because a sub makes less than the classroom teacher if they take part of that as unpaid. So we can be very granular in that in our methods. Staffing plays a big part in the budget process. We analyze class sizes, departmental, and programmatic needs. This drives the budget, as salaries and benefits are the biggest portion of our expenditures, as you'll see. We will be sharing our tentative budget in both meetings in June, prior to putting it on display for the requisite 30 days. We will be putting an ad in the paper at the end of June, notifying the public, as well as posting on our website of the tentative budget. And then we will have a hearing in August for the tentative budget, and it'll be finalized and approved by the board by the end of September as required by state law. This is just a kind of a breakdown on the budget calendar that you approved last September. You authorized me to work on the budget. You approved legal notice for the public hearing for the levy, which happened in October, November. We had the levy presentation, which kind of dictates our budget, since most of our budget revenue comes from the property tax cycle. A very good percentage. That kind of drives our budget. So we know what we're getting back in November after you've determined what the levy is going to be. They extend that in April. And then in December, we filed our levy. We had a budget overview we have a budget overview discussion scheduled for June 12th and June 26th, when you will approve the tentative budget. We will have the public hearing on the tentative budget on August 14th, and then you will be presented with the final budget during the month of August and vote on it in September. And it's due in the tax extension office by the 29th of September. There are some changes that are being proposed at the federal government level. I believe the budget goes to the Congress this week. There's a proposed increase of 4% for Title I, the ESSA, or Every Student Succeeds Act. We get about $350,000, $400,000 from Title I, so that's about $12,000 doing the quick math. 13% decrease to Title II, which we typically use for supporting effective instruction or professional development. We typically get in the neighborhood of $17,000, so if you do the quick math, it's a little bit closer to $10,000 decrease there. And then a 0.5% increase in IDEA, or Individuals with Disabilities Education Act for Special Education, that goes to the state. A 0.5% is very slight. The state has many different plans circulating. Some of them have kind of been debunked in the last 24 hours. Many of you might have seen the Lake County Gazette article floating around that shows us losing $2.6 million. Nick received an email from Andy Maynard through some of the professional organizations we belong to today, saying the information that's out there is false. It was approved by the Senate. We're not sure in what way, shape, or form, but that plan, again, shows us losing more than just about anybody in Lake County, about 80% of our state funding, which would be detrimental to us. $2.6 million is very significant on our budget. We don't think it would go through the House. We think there are enough opponents, and we're being as vocal as we can about it with our representatives and legislators. So I don't think that's going to go through. I think what's happening is, what's been happening over the last couple of years, is nothing's going to happen. And we'll continue to get basically flat amounts from the state. That's kind of how I've prepared the budget. If we find out anything's concrete, we certainly will make adjustments going forward. But as the status quo has been the status quo for several years, I think it's going to be status quo again. I think that there's a stalemate and nobody's blinking, and it's not going to change. The local tax levy is our most reliable source and has been growing slowly the past few years, incrementally by 0.7, 0.8, 1.5. This coming year, the second half of our taxes. So remember the extension that was that you're paying, or this next week or two, if you pay it outside of escrow, that you're making to Lake County, we get those tax dollars. We actually got our first payment. It's in your packet today. We got our first $1.3 million. We'll get our significant payment after the first week in June when they're actually due. The escrow companies tend to pay them a little bit early, and then we'll get them continuously through June, and then it'll slow down to trickle until September when the next payment is due, and then we'll get them throughout all the way up until January. And we do collect about 99.5% of our property taxes, and they are paid in a timely fashion, so we can count on those funds, unlike some areas which rely much more heavily on state funding, which you can't count on. We are about $2 million shy from the state as to what we've been due this year. They're late in their payments. Luckily, we have other sources we are much more dependent on that help us. District expenditures, just a quick overview. We see an increase in staffing, again, due to programming needs and enrollment increases. We've adjusted class sizes to effectively deal with the enrollment increases. We're seeing some decreases at some grade levels, some increases at others, and we're moving those folks around. We're looking to increase curricular spending from $500,000 to $750,000, kind of a promise we made several years ago. We're finally hitting that level that we think is adequate. Dr. Straley's not here to defend that, but maybe she thinks it should be higher, and we certainly, as needs arise, we will certainly look at that, but we're happy to bringing that to a level that we think is adequate. Our technology leases, including our new personalized learning initiative, resulted in lease payments approximately $450,000 this year, including our $150,000 lease that you're looking at this evening. Insurance premium costs, we have great news on the health insurance front. A decrease in our HMO plan by 0.6% and a PPO increase of 1.4%. We did have a meeting with our insurance company for our staff last week to show them the differences in those plans to hopefully drive some of our folks to the lower cost HMO plan. And I think some of those growing distance between the HMO and the PPO will hopefully drive some folks to those plans. We have, again, in the last contract, we added several plans on the PPO front with moving from a PPO 200 to PPO 300 for our staff, leaving the PPO 200 as an option if they pay the difference between the 300 and the 200, and then also giving, especially those folks with families with higher costs associated with their insurance, a $750 and a $1,200 option for PPO. So we have seen some folks move to those plans to help decrease their insurance costs and provide the adequate coverage that they need for their families. We are looking to utilize $12 million in fund balance to fund the building of the Sullivan Center Kindergarten. The budget that I'm going to show you in June will show that. The information I'm going to share tonight will not show that, but it will be built into the budget. Excluding the use of funds for the Sullivan Center Kindergarten, we have a balanced operating budget with revenues of just under $66 million and expenditures that match at this point. If we receive any updates between now and the next meeting, we will update those to reflect that. We will see if the state gives us any more direction prior to we're kind of waiting for their adjournment in May to see if anything will happen starting with our July 1st fiscal year. PMA is a company we utilize to look at our 5-year projections. We sat down just prior to the budgetary process to kind of walk through the retirees and the additions to our staffing and any adjustments we think will be happening in our process. And I know it's very hard to see. I know it's in front of you, but for the audience, I'll kind of walk through our 5-year numbers. We're looking at a slight deficit in this document of about $151,000, as I indicated. We brought that to the balance level in the document I'm working on. But as you can see, over the next several years, we're showing slight deficits of somewhere in the neighborhood of $500,000 each year, which is typically much better than we've seen the last several looks at our PMA. We build very conservatively. We kind of look at worst case scenarios on many fronts. When I came in, that number 5 years out was $6 million. And obviously last year we did not have a deficit, we had a surplus. So we're able to adjust accordingly and bring these numbers down. But we want to give kind of a realistic picture, more on the conservative side than on a real optimistic side. It's hard to be optimistic in Illinois with the status of our government. So we tend to err on the side of caution. We don't build in much growth in revenues. We build in conservative increases in CPI because we've seen pretty conservative increases over the last 10 years. So as you can see, those numbers don't look as bad as they typically have over a 5-year projection, but I'm sure Abe will update those. I'll update this to reflect our budget when I show you our presentation in June, and you'll see that, again, balanced for this year, and we'll see how that affects our years going forward. Overall look at our revenue sources. Just kind of caveat on this, other state revenue is hyperinflated because we include in there our pass-through for the $13 million for the actuarial liability for our on-behalf payments for our teachers into TRS. That's about a $13 million number. So obviously, if you take $13 million out, and we end up much closer to the about the 8% range, I would say. Property taxes, again, make up the bulk of our revenue. We have about 3% from the feds and other local revenue, which is fees and activity fees, registration fees, one-to-one technology fees, generate 4% of our local revenue, as well as corporate personal property taxes that are paid by businesses. We get in the neighborhood of $300,000 for that. On the next page, you'll see the expenditures by object, and as you can see, salaries make up the bulk of our expenditures. Benefits make up 15%, so those two together make 75%. And purchase services, part of that can actually be attributed to salary and benefits because much of our purchase services go to labor, such as bus drivers as part of our busing contract. It gets coded as purchase services, same with our cleaning service that does our nighttime cleaning, GCA. Much of that is labor. So if we were to have those items in-house, our number would be much higher. But we pay those as contracts, so they're coded under purchase services. Supplies and materials is probably less than you might expect, 7% towards supplies and materials. Non-capitalized equipment, we kind of set the threshold of capitalization of equipment where you depreciate the equipment at $5,000. So anything less than $5,000 is non-capitalized. Anything over $5,000, such as if we bought a truck or built an addition to a building or put a roof on a building, is capitalized and amortized over the life of the item. Other objects would include tuition to outside organizations such as CDAL or to private facilities for special education would fall under other objects. Just to give you an overview of our state financial profile rating, it looks at the overall health of our school district and all school districts in Illinois. Our score is 3.55, but when you adjust for the late payments that we're due at the end of the fiscal year last year that the state still owed us, it rose to 3.9 when you calculate in the late payments from the state. Our state payments year to date total $5.17 million, and we have about just over $2 million that the state has remaining, or about 40%. So the state is late on 40% of their payments that are due to us at this point. In fiscal year 2016, we had about $900,000 that was paid this year that was due last year prior to the end of that audit of the fiscal year. So that's throwing our number off a little bit when you look at that. Our district ranks the financial recognition category along with 69% or 585 districts statewide. That's improved over the last several years, believe it or not, even though we're getting very flat payments from the state. When it's adjusted for late payments, 74% or 632 districts are in the same category as us out of about the 870 districts that exist in the state. So we are in financial solid shape. On the next page, you'll see how they calculate our score. It's a matter of 5 different factors. Fund balance to revenue ratio, that's why we're at a 4 on that. You'll see they take only the operating funds into account. Expenditure to revenue ratio, that is where our score is affected in this profile score. We would be at a 4, instead of a 3 if we got our payments on time because our revenue would be higher. Days cash on hand, they look at that factor, how many days you're able to operate if we didn't get another cent in revenues, and we're in good shape on that. Percent of short-term borrowing remaining, we don't borrow short-term, so that doesn't affect us. We have the highest score. And then the only issue that we have is really our long-term debt margin remaining. The state likes to see a little bit more availability of debt, but obviously we built a new building back in 2005, and that affected the amount of money we had to take out and drives up our long-term debt. That will be obviously depending on the situation with whether the district chooses to go out for a referendum again or not and take out more borrowing, that will affect that score. Happy to answer any questions at this time. Again, I'll be presenting a more thorough breakdown of the budget at the next meeting in June.
In terms of the fund balance,
Yes.
is there a guideline as to appropriate fund balance as a percent of expenditures and also number of months of expenditures?
We generally like to look at having at least 6 months cash on hand as a guideline. 3 to 6 months is generally the guideline, or 25 to 50% of fund balance, just like they recommend at home. If you have an emergency, a roof needs to be replaced, or you need a furnace, you need to have some expenditures, some cash flow available to take care of those emergency expenditures. We haven't seen an emergency in the 7 years that I've been here, but if we did, we would need access to cash. It's important to make sure that you have that on hand. It all depends on how you look at it as well. We are at our lowest point in cash right now. We're in the neighborhood of $20 to $22 million in cash on hand. It's not all liquid. Much of it is invested, but it is cash available. If we needed to pull it all at once, we could. But this again is the low point right before we get our spring taxes. At the end of June, it will rise to that level, closer to 50%, and then it may even go above that threshold, closer to 75 to 100% in September after we receive all of our taxes. But I wouldn't look at it at the end of September. I would look at it probably more in the neighborhood of May or June and see where you're at, and it should be in the neighborhood of 25 to 50% to take care of those necessary expenses. We have in the neighborhood of $5 million in expenditures each month for all of our purchases, as well as all of our salary and payroll. And then if we choose to move forward with the Sullivan Center, we'll be pulling money out to take care of that project out of fund balance.
Taking that $12 million out, that's going to affect our fund balance to revenue ratio, as well as the days cash on hand. Will our 4s drop to a 3 then?
Well, I need to take I can run a calculation for you and let
Roughly?
you know at the next meeting. We would probably be in the neighborhood of $10 million left with cash on hand, and I'll take a look and see how that calculation reworks if that is taken.
And what does that total profile score really mean? Does it impact our borrowing? It doesn't really do anything, so
No,
dropping a bit.
Dropping a bit wouldn't. I mean, obviously, you'd like to be in the financial recognition category. I don't. The rating agencies look more at your overall patterns, and if you can explain we're using $12 million in fund balance to build a building, they would look at that as a meaningful expenditure that is conscientious of the taxpayer, as well as you're not using it to buy something that's going to be gone in 3 years. You're going to be utilizing it for something that's going to be around for 50 years at least.
Are you building in new development?
We are building we are building in new development into the PMA projections. Yes, we know some houses are coming in line in the late fall, but we didn't build in obviously all the full build out. We built it in the coming years, probably over the 5 year.
And then would that also include retail development that's coming up?
Well, much of the retail development, obviously Melody Farms is not going to affect our taxes because it's a TIF district.
Right.
So we did not build anything in for that. And the other retail will kind of be a wash, I think, than anything.
Brad, did I hear you mention that corporate property taxes are only accounting for about $300,000?
It's called a corporate property replacement tax.
Oh, okay.
It's not corporate property
Gotcha.
taxes. That's entirely.
Okay, so that's not really where Nick would come in discussing with the village about giving tax breaks to corporations that are, okay.
That's
That's
a
different.
separate issue.
Okay.
They pay the same tax rate that you pay on your
Right.
home. So Walgreens here, I mean, it's probably a several $1 million property, and they pay the same tax rate
Right.
as you.
Okay.
Unless they were in a TIF district like Melody Farms is going to.
Keep saying that.
Keep saying that.
I know, I'm like, stop. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any more questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Before we move on to the consent agenda, there was a presentation that was scheduled for later, and I wanted to move it up for now. This is by Jason from the DLR group. Is that okay?
Sure.
Jason, you have the floor.
You should have a copy at your desk.
Yep.
It's black and white, so his will be in color.
Hello, good evening, everyone.
Hi.
So I was asked to come and present an overview of the upcoming steps for the Sullivan Center, presuming the Board of Education approves that project moving forward. And I wanted to capture our process. Now, the process is greatly detailed through our master agreement, our contract language about exactly steps from A to Z that we would need to go through in order to facilitate our instruments of service. What I wanted to do tonight is boil that down into some simple steps by phase and the percentage of our work by phase, as again outlined by that master agreement, so that you all had an understanding of what might be expected in the coming months. And I've also put anticipated timelines with each milestone or each phase so that you could see the schedule, presuming it's approved. So in generalities, there are 4.5 phases. I kind of consider bid negotiations a half a phase because of its duration. But schematic design, design development, construction documentation, and then construction administration are sort of the major phases of the process. Schematic design entails 15% of the overall work from the design side. I think this is important too. We talked a lot during the master plan process about what the plan is and what it isn't. And the plan was a roadmap, but not architecture. And so we always talked about with the core team and with the community how this was the first step in a broader conversation. And so even though there were diagrams created for that master plan and depicting each one of the options, they were generic in nature. We didn't know exactly where things would go, and we actually still don't know exactly where things will go pending conversations moving forward in the process. I think that's an important distinction to make. So really, schematic design is about conceptual design. It's testing the ideas and vetting the opportunities. And with the partnerships that you have available to you for this project, it's important that this phase be done correctly such that you can make appropriate decisions based on those opportunities. In other words, we've had some partnering meetings with Park District and the Village and the library, and talking about opportunities and traffic flow, how the facility might be situated. There's been some discussion about the wetlands and mitigation and all those sorts of things. And they have asked for some additional information. So we need to continue that conversation in order to create the value that we need to create in schematic design and answer a lot of the questions that we all have about, for example, the cost of mitigating the wetlands, the fire access around the back side of the building. These were all plugged into the master plan process to the best of our ability at the time, but they need to be vetted. When we put engineering to the mitigation of the wetlands, we might find that cost target has shifted. based on that data. It wasn't available at the time because engineering services were not available at the time. So we're going to review and establish the program, in other words, what you're going to build to. We know in generalities, the estimate was $11.7 million and change for about 36,935 square feet. So those are the parameters that we have based on the budget dollars that were allocated. There are the three-legged stool of design or any project are cost, quality, and size. And you can fix as a board 2 of those 3, but not all 3, because we don't control all 3 when it comes to the bid analysis and the construction. So as an example, you might say that we're going to control the cost. In other words, we have a $12 million do not exceed number for construction. Okay, that's great. You could then tell me that we want to create brick and block construction with steel frame. So you've set the cost and you've set the quality. Now through the cost estimation process, we're going to be able to tell you how much building you can afford. Conversely, if you were to say that we want to build 41,621 square feet and we only have $12 million to spend, I'm going to tell you the kind of building that might be. It might be metal frame construction, or it might be something else, not necessarily brick and block. It might be metal panel on the outside. The Park District might have an opinion on that, or the IGA might stipulate some of those aesthetics. So it's important that we balance all 3 of those factors through the process, but no more important than in this first phase in schematic design, so that we can set the ground for good decision-making as we move forward through the process. So we're going to conceptually lay out the facility. The master agreement talks about 5 options for laying out the facility and working with your partners. And of course, the design team, whomever might be on that, will determine what that is through a collaborative workshop series. As I already mentioned in number 3, balance that quality, cost, and size. So you're in process, or soon will be in process, of hiring a construction manager. I encourage you to move through that process quickly. Their opinions and professional qualifications will be very important to this first phase of the process. Of course, we'll work with the Park District in accordance with the IGA, as well as your civil engineer, to identify those issues and opportunities like I'd mentioned with the wetlands. And then at the end of this phase, as with the end of every phase, there'll be a formal board presentation and approval of that phase. This is an opportunity for you to check to make sure that the process is moving forward as anticipated. And if there are things that come up during the process, this is also your opportunity to hit the pause button.
Jason, I had a quick question.
Sure.
We know we are going to hire a construction manager separately. What about the civil engineer? Is that from you? Is that you have to send out a different RFQ for that? How does that work?
The district has a civil engineer, as I understand it. Brad, correct me if I'm wrong on that.
Yeah, James, we've used Gewalt, right? Yeah, Gewalt.
Gewalt Hamilton.
Okay, so we already have him.
You have that on board, and that's actually, if I'm not mistaken, also the village's engineer. So I think there's some synergies there that will help through the process.
Thanks.
Sure. So in schematic design, I've also listed some of the milestone activities. Partnering meetings, as I mentioned, we've already begun here. Now, at one of the recent meetings, there was discussion about sort of aggregating all the information to create a common plan, and it was suggested that the district be the lead in that endeavor. Well, should additional services be required in that, I recommend that you go back to those agencies and talk about how that might be shared. It's not necessarily a burden, in my opinion, that you should shoulder on your own, but that's, of course, for you to negotiate. So, of course, I mentioned our collabs. We had a series of collabs through our master plan process. We'll have more of those. It's at your discretion who sits on the design team or committee or whatever you want to call them. They'll be charged with sort of the intermediate decision-making along the way in between each milestone presentation to the board, much like the master plan process. So if you want to have board representation on that design team, of course, you're welcome to do so. We'll do some tours of some similar facilities in Chicagoland to see what's out there and allow you to sort of test the waters with both what's been built as well as the teachers who use the facilities. So if you assemble a design team, I would certainly recommend that you would have kindergarten related expertise on that committee such that they can ask those very important questions. We would anticipate a board update in June. We have schematic design running between May and July, presuming board authorization. I mentioned hiring a construction manager. Again, time is of the essence in that regard. And there may be, depending upon the cadence of your board meetings, there may be a necessity to have a special board meeting to require, to approve schematic design to keep the process on schedule. If you recall from perhaps a December conversation or a November conversation that we had, there are some targeted bid windows that the construction cycle in school construction follows. Then February is our best bid window for major constructions as contractors and trades fill up their summer docket. And so we want to make sure that we hit that bid window. And to that end, our schedule has been designed with that in mind. Design development is the next phase. If you think of this process like a funnel, it starts very broadly at the top and works ever so to create refined decisions, and at the bottom it's at its most refined. Well, design development is the next step in the process and is designed to focus all of the design decisions that were not able to be made in schematic design. And generally speaking, obviously it goes to the continued design, but more than that, when we leave schematic design, you will have pared the options down to one, that your schematic design approval will be the option that you choose to proceed with. If for whatever reason there are still multiple options at the table in the end of July due to any number of circumstances, we'll have to delay the completion of schematic design until that can be pared down to that single option or choice that you've made. More detailed layouts of systems, construction details, and outline specifications are prepared for your review as well as the construction manager's review in this phase. Again, it becomes this balance of quality, cost, and size. We'll do or your construction manager will do cost estimates at the conclusion of every phase to ensure compliance. With every phase, the more information provides more exacting detail on what those costs might be. Also, when we get closer to bid conditions, we'll have a better understanding of the market conditions that you'll be subjected to in that time period. So drawings will include plans and elevations, system diagrams, typical details, sections, and things like that. Milestone activities, if the design team, again, if your discretion would continue design work, meetings with, this is the first time that we're going to start to sit down with authorities having jurisdiction. Who might that be? So that might be the Regional Office of Education. That might be Lake County. That might be the village. Obviously, we'll be partnering with them in the process, but this is their first opportunity to review the project and to see that there's conformance with their requirements. Formal review will occur at the completion of construction documents with those agencies. There'll be a board update in August and approval of design development and the cost estimate at the end of September. Now, right now, our amendment to the master agreement is outlined to fix our fee as a lump sum at the end of design development. Why is that? Well, there comes a time when the project needs to have its costs fixed, and design development is the best time to do that, such that if you choose to make changes to the building, either to add value or to decrease its value, there is an expectation of cost that you have that won't change. In other words, if during construction there were change orders and I was on a percentage of construction scale for my fee would rise and fall as the change orders rose and fell. Now, depending upon what those change orders are, that might be a benefit to you or it might be a benefit to me. But from a community perspective, in my experience working with school districts, it's best to fix that fee so that there's no perception of enrichment on my side if you choose to enrich the value of the project through a beneficial bid. In other words, if your bid values come in lower or higher and you want to make changes, then I'm not changing my fee as a result. So that fixed fee, I find, is the best time to do that at the end of design development. The major decisions have been made, the partnering agreements are in place, and we're just basically moving forward with documentation. Prior to that, if, for example, you were to say that cost is not a fixed, I'm not predicting that you will, but let's say the cost for $12 million is not fixed, then my fee might rise or fall with the value of the project until design development. So construction documents, this is the largest phase of our services from a percentage basis. Why is that? This is the creation of the legal instruments. So construction documents are legal instruments by which you will create contracts for construction. They will be the basis for design and your legal documents by which you can administer those contracts. So all of the design decisions by construction documents will be made. Our process will just be literally documenting those through design plans, elevations, sections. You can see a list here and specifications, as well as the preparation for bidding documents. The general conditions and all those kinds of things will be completed during this phase. Your cost estimate, well, one or two verifications, depending upon your CM that you choose. They offer one or two prior to bid, and any value engineering and alternate bids established. So let's talk about that for a minute. So let's presume that you're going to fix your construction budget at $12 million all in. If at the time of construction document estimation, your construction manager and ourselves say market conditions are not conducive or market conditions are conducive to additional work, we'll recommend additional alternates or value engineering changes to the documents to suit the budget. In other words, we want to mitigate risk and ensure that the project can be delivered. So at that time, if you choose to do either additive or deductive alternates, let's say that we've predicted a favorable bid market. You could create an add alternate for an additional 2,000 square feet for additional classroom space or what have you. That alternate bid would be designed and documented and listed for the bidders to put a number to. And then you would only pay for that. Let's say that you went forward with the bid process, bids came in as anticipated. You'd move forward with that alternate. You would essentially fold that into the construction costs and you would move forward. If for whatever reason you didn't choose to build that alternate, the cost of services to document that alternate would be expended regardless of whether or not you chose to construct it. Does that make sense? So we would work through a process of establishing what those additive and deductive alternates would be, as well as any material changes to meet the budget. So there are a lot of activities, but they're mostly internal to our design team and our consultants at this point. There'll be 2 board updates during this phase, presuming the schedule. And then, of course, related work with the authorities having jurisdiction prior to permitting. So there'll be permit applications on a number of fronts that will have to be filled out and executed during this time period just prior to bid. A bidding phase is 5% of our services. Generally speaking, it will be largely led by your construction manager, but we will be creating those bid documents for CM scope of work, answering requests for information that come in for bidders, clarifications on the documents. We'll be issuing any addendums that might need to be issued to those documents during this phase. Attending pre-bid meetings and scope review meetings. What's the difference? A pre-bid meeting occurs prior to the bids being submitted. A scope review meeting is basically vetting the bidders to determine who that lowest responsible bidder might be prior to recommendation to the board, which you see in number 4. So the major milestone activity, again, mostly internal activity during this phase, would be board presentation for bids. I don't know yet whether or not your CM will recommend multiple prime contractors or a single prime contractor. That'll all have to be discussions that would take place once they are on board. Construction administration is 20% of our service. Generally speaking, our role is to ensure conformance. We've created the legal documentations that bind your decisions into an ultimate building product, and our task is to make sure that that product is as you expect it to be. So in other words, if you have construction that's masonry construction, it's our job to make sure that that masonry meets the intention of the design. So you'll see site visits appropriate to the progress of the work. Now, some people might say, well, we want you to come monthly. Well, there are going to be months where you want me to come more than monthly. So I don't write in a specific cadence for those because I want to make sure that I'm here at the right times for you. There might be months when I'm here 4 times a month, and then there might be another month where I'm here once. It just depends on how things are going. We'll respond to requests for information and create any remedial documents that are required due to changes, unforeseen conditions. Let's say we finish our soils report, we dig a big hole, and we find out that there's bad soil under the hole that didn't show up in the test reports. We would issue clarification to the documents or amendment to the documents so that that could be remediated and you could continue on with construction. We'll, of course, issue clarifications and interpretations along the way. Per our contract, we're the final decision maker on aesthetic interpretations. What's often done in construction is you might find a tile pattern or something that's put into the design, while someone might have a different interpretation of that. No, our design documents will have the ultimate say in what that is. But as far as any changes to the scope of work, dollar value changes, change orders, things like that, that all goes through the board and through the construction manager. We're also going to approve pay applications and change order requests. We're going to review shop drawings. So shop drawings are the contractor's instrument of service to tell us what they're going to put in the building. Many times that includes product details, specific section details, warranties, things like that all get submitted for review. We'll issue clarifications or interpretations to the contractor based on those shop drawings. Declare substantial completion. So substantial completion is a major milestone in the contract language. It basically says that the building is available for its intended purpose. This is the point where we can begin to formulate an occupancy permit plan. We'll go through a punch list process. This is the final detailing of the project to make sure that there's conformance with, again, the documentation. So any non-conforming items will be listed for punch list and then repaired or remedied by the contractor. So some important notes, because as often the case, clarity at the beginning is the most important time. And so when we think about what our role is in the design process, we're not the constructor. We're not the construction manager. These are all specific roles. So means, methods, and construction techniques fall outside of our scope. Sequences or procedures, in other words, how a job might be phased or constructed from side to side, north to south, east to west. Safety is not under our purview. Failure of a contractor to perform is also not under our purview. And so with that, I'll entertain any questions that you all have. There was a lot of information in a short period of time, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Let's pretend in a utopian world that everything goes along on this perfect timeline according to plan.
Mm-hmm.
What would you expect a substantial completion date to be? What is from digging the shovel in day one to occupancy? What typically are we looking at here?
So there are a lot of ifs in my answer, but you said utopian, so I'll go that way. I would say that we would look at a construction window of anywhere between 8 and 12 months for this size of project.
So
if
we're
we
looking
hit,
at occupancy 2019, not 2018.
I have to do the math on that. So we would bid in the spring of 18.
Right.
So if everything went swimmingly in your utopian vision, there's a possibility that you might make a late fall start if you wanted to.
But realistically, that's not.
Realistically, I think it'd be a mid-year move-in in January.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So the original estimate of 12 or 11.77 million was about 2 years old, year and a half old. Anything market-wise that has drastically changed possible costs, such as lumber not being available from Canada or something like that, that would really change our costs that worry you?
No, not specifically. Every year we see between 3 and 4% construction cost escalation just due to labor in the market. I'm not hearing of many material shortages. Many years ago, you might have heard of steel being a big deal as other countries were consuming a lot of our product. But I have not heard of those. The typical long lead items will be related to aluminum, glass, storefront systems, those kinds of things, but nothing out of the ordinary. We'll be looking to the materiality of the building as we get into schematic design. I know that there are some aesthetic requirements that the Park District will have just based on some verbal conversations that we have had in keeping with the character of the existing Sullivan Center. So I'm not worried about precast concrete at this point, although we might have precast concrete for the storm shelter component. That might be a 12-week lead time item, just depends. We also might endeavor to create multiple bid packages such that we can get ahead of any long lead time items, mechanical systems, those kinds of things that might be constricting the market. So we'll continue to keep a watchful eye on that, but I'm not seeing anything outside of the usual expected construction at cost escalation. Thanks.
How many of your firm's projects stay on budget?
Nationally?
Yeah.
Well, I don't have the exact statistic on that, to be honest with you.
Okay. Just curious.
Yeah. That's a good question. I'll follow up with the answer. I'll get back to our national managers and see what they can come up with for that.
Okay, and I'd also be interested in hearing for those projects that do exceed their budgets, what's the average overage, percentage-wise?
Okay. I'll
Thank
get
you.
that data to you.
Thank you.
Sure.
And when you suggested, when you threw out a few examples of who typically sits on these committees during the design phase, you suggested like a kindergarten teacher and, it's up to us if we want to do a board member, whatever. Who else would you recommend as far as stakeholders around the community and staff, and who do you typically see sit on these committees?
Well, that varies as well. My recommendation would be more than one kindergarten expert. Superintendent, business manager, board member if you choose, students if you choose, community members if you choose. I've really not had a process where we haven't included one stakeholder group or another, so I think that I'm comfortable working with any of those groups. It's up to you. I guess I'd say a quarter of the time I don't see community members on a design committee, so that's subjective. I see probably on the opposite side of the spectrum, students 25% of the time that they're involved, particularly at the youngest age levels, but I have had kindergartners involved in kindergarten design projects. It's kind of fun.
What's the size of that type of a committee usually?
I would stick between 8 and 12.
In your opinion, would you recommend any park district person, because they can be a community member, but they are also our partners? So what in your opinion of having done this before, would it be recommended to have one of them on the board, on the committee for the design thing?
I don't think it can hurt. Does your IGA say anything one way or the other about that?
No, I don't think so.
Well, it does give them review and approval.
No,
of
it's
the
a review
design.
and approval. I was talking about sitting on the committee for the design, so that's what
I think it would be helpful to keep open lines of communication with the park district in this particular case, such that if they're part and parcel to the conversations. Now, this is a great example. We had a conversation at our last meeting with the village and the park district and the library, talking about this setback and the alignment of the drive that comes out of Middle South onto Aspen to create fire access across the site to the, I guess it'd be the east. And the village's initial assertion was that we would conform to this direct line across. And after conversation in that meeting, talking about the pros and the cons that it then led to, they understood. And such, you could create a much faster reciprocal conversation than I could have going every month and communicating with them, and then basically communicating decisions that had already occurred. So the interaction and the synergy that can be created through that partnership would probably be welcome in this scenario, particularly in the early phases. Even if they didn't participate from beginning to end, it might be helpful in the early phases to do that.
Is there a little bit of an overlap between the construction manager services and your construction administration services that you've outlined?
In what way?
In terms of oversight and ensuring that construction is following the architectural drawings and things like that?
Well, in general, the construction manager is your partner. They're separately contracted for your eyes and ears on site. Whereas if you were to go through a GC process, a general construction process, you have no contractual oversight of that process other than through that GC relationship. So the CM is on your side of the table rather than on the contractor side of the table. So they're not looking out for profit, they're looking out for your budget. As far as overlap of services in general, I would say no. As I outlined in my qualifications for what was not included, I'll just go back to that slide. So if you look at means, methods, and construction techniques, sequences and procedures, how they're going to phase the job, stage the job from side to side, store materials, safety of the site, failure of a contractor to perform, these are all services that would normally be put to your GC if you didn't have a CM, and they're not contracted to you in the same way. So with a CM, in general, they're responsible for the daily operations of construction and how that might be outlined, whereas my responsibility is for conformance with the documentation. So they don't, well, that's not entirely true. I was going to say they didn't review shop drawings. They do also review shop drawings, but my stamp is the one that provides the authority to move forward with that work, not theirs.
And when you include safety on there, you're talking about site
Site
safety
safety.
during construction, not
Correct.
conformance to life safety building codes and things
That's
like that.
correct.
Any other questions, discussion?
Or no?
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you.
Could you take a couple minutes break?
Yeah. You tell us.
We need a couple minutes break.
Okay.
So now we can.
We now reconvene. The next item on the agenda is the consent agenda, which includes board minutes from May 8th, the closed session minutes from May 8th, the expenditure report from May, the Amex report from April, the appointment of Mr. Abe Singh as the school treasurer, a leave of absence by Ms. Patty Von Kemke, resignation by Martisa Morales and Tamar Herrenfeld, the new hires whom we just met, Lisa Rare and Lauren Prescott. Do I have any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I move that the Board of Education approve the consent agenda items as presented.
Second?
I second.
Motion by Robin, seconded by Wes. Can I get a roll call vote, please?
Jason Tron.
Aye.
Julie Simpson.
Aye.
Jeff Bard.
Aye.
Robin Cleek.
Aye.
Wes Poland, aye. Matt Jacobs.
Aye.
Sonali Patel.
Aye. Motion passes 7 ayes, 0 nays. The next discussion item is the Dell Technology lease for devices. It was previously discussed in the last meeting. If anybody, any questions?
Didn't receive any questions. It's still the same lease that you were provided with previously. We're excited about this. It is the lease for the devices for the middle school to go to one-to-one in our personalized learning. So I don't know if there were any further questions or any questions.
Could we just get a brief summary of the lease?
Can you do that, Brett?
Yes. Need to pull up the exact documents besides the resolution itself. 1 second. This is for a Chromebook lease. It is for 1,565 units. The units are $259.93 each, with a Chromebook management console license of $25.54 each, for a total purchase price of $446,760.55, split into 3 payments with 0% finance.
Any comments, any discussion? No? The next item is the Technology Acceptable Use Policy and Responsible Use Policy, 6-235, Access to Electronic Networks. It was previously discussed last meeting, which was May 8th.
This evening is just the policy, 6-235, the acceptable use agreement. The board had made some suggestions for changes. Working on those changes and a few others that we think might make it even better. So this evening is just we're just requesting the approval of the policy, and I'll bring the acceptable use agreement back to the board at the first meeting in June when we finalize some of the wording. We did the wording, then we gotta get the attorney to just make sure it covers us appropriately. So if there are any questions on either one or other suggested changes to the agreement, I can get those down.
I would just like to make a small suggestion or propose one for consideration. In item 2, under internet safety, it says restrict student access to inappropriate matter. I would like consideration of restrict student and staff access to inappropriate matter.
This is in the policy or the agreement?
It's in the policy 6-235.
Okay.
So you're suggesting the,
Add the word staff.
right, to add the word staff. Okay. So when we make a motion to approve it, we would make the motion to approve that policy with noted change of the addition of the word staff.
As long as everyone's in agreement.
Right.
Yeah.
Can we get a voice vote for that, or we can do it at the motion?
We can do it at the motion.
At the motion.
I'm assuming we don't want our staff going to inappropriate materials. So.
I'd like to assume we didn't have to say that.
Yeah. Right.
The next item for discussion is the summer work bid for 2017. It was also presented and discussed last meeting on the 8th.
Brad, do you want to do a quick review again?
Yeah, we're recommending the approval of Construction Consulting and Disbursement Services Incorporated to provide accessibility improvements, life safety improvements, exterior refinishing, interior refinishing, and mechanical equipment replacement at the district office, Elementary North, Middle North, Town Line, John Power Center, Middle South, and Aspen Elementary Schools. Recommending we move forward with the base bid in the amount of $478,000 as they were the lowest responsible qualified bidder. Any other questions?
About that?
Nope.
About the summer work bid? Oh, the next one is Press 94. And these are a few of them which do not need any, are just mandated or required. So we'll go through those quickly. There are 3 of them that we need to have what the rest of the board members think. The first one is 2-100. This is board member conflict of interest. The policy, legal references, cross-references, and footnotes are updated in response to the federal regulations requiring written standards of conduct covering conflicts of interest and governing the actions of those engaged in selection, award, and administration of contracts in compliance with 2 CFR 200.318. It doesn't require any action from us. That has to be adopted as is. The next one, which needs, is succession of authority. In this, the policy and footnotes are updated. The new text states that the superintendents may submit the succession plan versus the board approving it. This change provides the board an opportunity for the superintendent to manage the district and provide leadership for the staff while allowing the board to monitor this policy and stay informed. The former text regarding approval of succession plan was moved, so that's an option. So when the superintendent, if the superintendent, building principal, or other administrator is temporarily unavailable, the succession of authority and responsibility of the respective office shall follow a succession plan developed by the superintendent and submitted to the Board of Education. Do we want to have approval of this plan, or do we want to leave it as just submitted to us?
Would this be something that would change frequently?
No. If I get run over by a bus, there's a actual folder on my computer and in Wendy's hands that says, if run over by a bus, it talks about what happens and what you need to do. But we also have the same thing for principals and other offices. It's pretty, it identifies the next position, not necessarily just the person. But there is a succession plan there if somebody is out for a period of time or something were to occur. So we have that. So I don't see that it would change often, but I do review it annually just to make sure that I know what to do in case there was an emergency in one of our buildings or somebody was out.
I think there should be a succession plan that is approved by the board.
I agree.
And I don't think it would change, but the board should be aware of what that plan is and should have approved it. And it should be pretty much logical and follow a typical fashion of who's next in line. But if the superintendent would put one together and provide it to the board, I think the board should approve it.
Do you want to go for this just for the superintendent, or it also states for the building principal and administrators? So it's succession plan for each one of them.
I think it would be helpful for each one, especially not all of our buildings even have an assistant principal necessarily. So I don't think there's something super obvious at every level to us. I mean, I agree with Jeff. I do think we should be approving that.
Okay. So everybody is in consensus for approval of this?
Yeah, so the superintendent would put the plan together.
Yes,
And identify those positions and then the succession for those positions.
Yeah, but we would want to approve.
Right.
We will approve it. So that's the option. So we want the approval.
So
I want to make sure.
So here's my next question, which is, when would you like me to present that to the board so we can put it on the calendar? So it would be something annually where we'd reminded. My suggestion would be possibly in August before school starts. So every August you would get, here's the succession plan, and then you would approve it, and then we go into the school year knowing what would happen if there was an issue.
That sounds fine.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do I need a voice vote to have the approval plan? Do that?
No, we can just direct the superintendent to put the plan together and bring it back to the board.
What do you mean for consensus?
When you make the recommendation for this policy, you're going with the option for board
Yes.
approval.
Yeah.
Right, that's all you'd have to do at that time.
Okay. The next one is identity protection. This was the 4-15. You got, this was also something that we did talk to our legal counsel for. The policy and legal are updated in response to the Policy Information Protection Act 815 ILCS 530, amended by PA 99-503. The policy text on compliance measures required under the law was updated specific to new notations. What the policy, it already has been updated. The question was, did we want to put in more protections? We consulted with our board attorneys, and if we wanted to provide or implement more protections that were already there, the opinion we got back was we didn't need to do that because they were already pretty onerous in the protection that is there. Anybody have any comments on that? Okay, take the advice of the board attorney. Go with the board attorney? Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
The next one is 4-180, pandemic preparedness. There were minor corrections are made to the policy for continuous improvement. And a purpose statement for the policy is added to the footnotes to help boards process their role and the superintendent's role in pandemic preparedness. Others are minor edits. There's nothing that we need to substantially change in it, so it's adopted as recommended with the changes. The next one is 5-70, religious holidays. The policy update is a minor style change. Footnotes reflect clarifications in the collective bargaining agreement instructions. So it is, we don't need to discuss it, adopted. 5-80, it is court duty. The policy update is a minor style change. Footnotes reflect clarifications in the collective bargaining agreement instructions again. The next one is 5-110. It's recognition of service. The footnotes are updated to change certificate to license.
You guys have these? 570, 580, 5110? I don't have any.
Yeah, they're.
Mine goes from 4-130 to 5-120.
It's actually towards the top of
Maybe it's in the last one. Are you looking at the press packet that came this meeting or the last meeting?
Aren't we doing press 94?
Yeah.
Yeah, press 94 from this meeting or last meeting, because it was sent in the last meeting too.
I'm looking at May 8th.
You're looking at May 8th?
Mm-hmm. You want me to look at tonight's? Is it different?
Well, I think the table that Sonali's going through lists all the items, even the ones that haven't changed, whereas you're looking at the text, which only has the changes in it.
Gotcha. You're looking at the
But
chart.
these were supposed to,
Okay.
because I'm supposed to, we are supposed to sign off
Right,
on
right, right.
these also.
So you're
which
looking
are-
at the chart and I'm looking at the
Yeah.
text. Yeah, okay. Gotcha. All right, carry on.
The next one is the 5-120, employee ethics, conduct, and conflict of interest. The policy has been renamed because they're updated in response to the federal regulations requiring written standards of conduct covering conflicts of interest and governing the actions of school district employees engaged in the selection, award, and administration of contracts in compliance with the 2 CFR 200.318. And the new subheads read professional and appropriate conduct, statement of economic interest, and outside employment are added to assist the reader with clarity. The next one is 5-140, solicitations by or from staff. The policy is unchanged. So it is just some of the policies have to be reviewed every 5 years, so some of them are unchanged. We just have to sign off on them saying that we did look through it. 5-210, it's resignation. The policy is unchanged. It's part of the review. The next one is 5-230, which is maintaining student discipline. The policy is updated to clarify, in paragraph 1, to clarify that all teachers, certified employees, and related service providers should follow school board policies and administrative procedures on student conduct, behavior, and discipline.
Just a
Paragraph-
question on that one. So do we do some type of training for our teachers on the policy related to student discipline and that?
We review at the beginning of the school year what our discipline policies, expectations, student handbook, those types of things.
Okay, thank you.
And the paragraph 2 is updated to indicate that the teacher should first discuss student behavior with the student if appropriate. A new footnote is added regarding school officials' discretion to determine appropriateness. Footnotes reflect clarifications in collective bargaining agreement instructions. The next one is 5-285, drug and alcohol testing for school bus and commercial vehicle drivers. The footnotes are updated. The next one is 5-300, schedules and employment year. The footnotes reflect clarifications in the collective bargaining agreement instructions. The next policy is 5-320, it's evaluation. The policy is unchanged. The next one is 6-70, teaching about religions. The policy is updated to clarify that neither preferential nor derogatory treatment shall be given to any single religion, religious belief, or to religion in general. The footnotes and legal references are updated on that one. The next policy is 6-185, remote educational program. The policy is unchanged. Now, this is the one we have options for, so.
7-100.
Yeah, I'm just opening it because I have notes written down for it. So I could discuss it. The next one is 7-100. It's health, eye, and dental examination, immunizations, and exclusions. In this policy, starting the beginning with the 2017-2018 school year, an age-appropriate developmental screening and an age-appropriate social and emotional screening are required parts of each health examination. A student will not be excluded from school due to his or her parent or guardian's failure to obtain a developmental screening or a social and emotional screening. This is what the policy is. The thing is, they have asked us if we want to follow some optional services that we might want to provide as school. One option is if the proof of developmental screening or social emotional screening portion of the health examination are not presented, qualified school support personnel may, with the parent or guardian's consent, offer the screenings to the child. And the second option is once a student presents proof that he or she received a developmental screening or a social and emotional screening, the appropriate school personnel to work, the school may, with parent and guardian's consent, make available appropriate school personnel to work with the parent, guardian, child, and provider who signed the screening form to obtain any appropriate evaluation and services. This is something if we want to do an addition to what was mentioned, because even though it is required that there should be a screening and for developmental and social emotional, we cannot exclude a child or a student from the recommended IASB policy, even if the student fails to provide that to us. So do we want to provide the option that if the student fails to provide to us, we will provide it for them with an appropriate licensed or qualified personnel, or the other one, which was provide a school personnel, qualified personnel to work with the child?
Would this only be for incoming kindergartners, or what grade level would this be? Or is this considered every single year, like you need a physical to come into school every single year?
I think entering kindergarten or first grade, entering sixth grade, and because those are when we knew
Transition, okay.
because it says that.
Why not?
Enrolling in an Illinois school. So if you're coming from out of state, so that's when the requirements are. It's in the top one, 7100, the first paragraph, right under that.
2, 3.
What do we
Right.
do now, and is there a recommendation from the administration?
Well, this is new, coming in for the social emotional piece. I actually liked option 2 out of those. Once a student's parent presents proof that he or she received developmental screening or social emotional screening, the school may, with the parent guardian consent, make available appropriate school personnel to work with the parent, guardian, child, and provider who signed the screening form to obtain any appropriate evaluations and services. So it struck me that as a partnership and working with them.
Adding either option with the wording of may doesn't really add anything. Because if we
agree.
don't have
Right.
that, you still can do it. There's no policy that says you can't offer that.
Your board attorneys have always recommended over the last 5 years to add the least amount as possible within these to give yourself as much flexibility. We would still consider doing those, but if you were looking at the options, option 2 is the one that I think is better. Remember, in this situation, you're not excluding a child from this particular screening, where in some cases, shot records or things might cause an exclusion. This is not, and it's new.
So if we don't add either option, we would still behave as if we added the
Yes.
option
Right.
by,
Yeah.
because it still allows us to, and we can, with the parents' consent,
We would reach
offer
out to the
services,
parents
yeah.
and say, you haven't
So we'll still
received
do that.
the screening. Is there something we can help you with this?
So we
Have the appropriate staff if we thought
Well,
there
I
was an
mean,
issue.
I agree, especially now that we're not doing the incoming kindergartner little
Intake
screening that
form.
we used to.
Mhm.
It's going to be important to provide that if people can't get that done.
No, but I think since we can't, we can provide it, but what Jason is saying
Right.
is like put it in a policy would be one thing, because then,
Putting a policy doesn't do anything
yeah, because it goes with the word may.
because of the word may. It doesn't say that we will do it or we shall do it. It just says we may provide assistance.
Right. Yeah,
So we
right.
want-
The options is somewhat meaningless the way it's written. It's just, I'm parsing words, but
Your
it's
attorney-
important.
Well, you're right. May makes a big difference.
Your attorneys generally have recommended pretty
So
consistent.
if we don't add that in
Fewer
there, we still
options, the
behave
better.
that way.
But you can operate that way, and we would consistently reach out to parents to provide.
I think that could be, is that something in the procedures that
Yeah,
you
we
guys
could- we
follow?
could-
Like we could update our procedures. We don't have to put it down in a policy manual, and we just take what is given without any of the single options.
Since this is new, it's a new requirement, having it as part of our administrative procedures, and really the expectation, the board's expectation is that we would reach out to families and provide the support for the students that haven't received those, especially if we see that there's an issue, potential issue. Since it's the first year, then we can see how that worked as well. So, yeah, I mean, it's something very easy to maintain in that regard.
So we approve it without any options. Okay. That is the end of press packet 94.
Aw.
That's your first press, congratulations. At least it wasn't 93, which was what, 1,000 pages?
Hey, it's not a competition.
It's not- Jeff takes it hands down. Next discussion item is IGA for the kindergarten center at the Sullivan Center. It has been discussed. Do you have is there any further questions that anybody has?
I just had a question. Is there any issue with transferring the required funds within the 30 days after the IGA?
No, we
is
shouldn't
approved?
have any problem with that.
That's good.
The Park District is looking to address this at their meeting on the 25th. Howard Metz, your attorney, has reviewed it multiple times, and you have received the last copy that we think we're good to go.
The next item was the addendum to the DLR group contract, which you had received, and Jason is here to answer any more questions if anybody has anything specific.
We noted timeline next to that item. If you notice, we're trying something new where we're putting, if it's been discussed previously, you've had the information. We reviewed it. I've answered a few questions for some folks. We put timeline in there because the presentation today showed somewhat of the timeline that the project would go. Also notice that the phases of that particular timeline is when you get billed for certain things. There's a term in there called lump sum. That doesn't mean you write one check, the whole thing. You pay as you go. And if for some reason we were to stop the project within a certain, stop after phase one, you only pay for the work that's been done. You do not pay for the work that is not done. Pay for it as it goes. So it isn't one big paycheck. It's multiple checks through the process.
Any questions for Jason or Nick? That Jason. Or Nick regarding any addendum? Discussion? Okay. Food service renewal.
Yes.
This is being discussed for the first time.
I'll just, on the agreement, before we move on, I just wanted to say my opinion that we learned a lot of information tonight, so my opinion is that we not vote on it tonight. And of course, we can decide that when the motion comes up, but that we receive the information tonight, some new information, and that we vote on it at the next meeting.
What does that delay?
How does that affect?
Yeah.
You'll have to ask.
It would delay the starting of the planning process by 2 weeks. We don't have another meeting until 2 weeks.
3 weeks.
3 weeks, excuse me,
Oh,
3
boy.
weeks. And so if we do have approval, Jason and I would get on the phone and immediately start more formally processing. The kindergarten teachers are waiting to hear that we can move forward, and we would design the plan team, start working on a calendar, start through that process. So it will delay. And the biggest thing is it just takes the window 3 weeks and moves it.
Unless we call a special meeting, which is really hard this time of year.
Is there specific information that you think we should mull over or that would?
Well, just
impact
in
our
case
decision?
somebody from the public wanted to comment on the information that was presented tonight, I'm just bringing it up for discussion. I mean, I'm willing to consider other viewpoints.
Two people that are in the audience listening.
There's people that watch. You never know.
And all the people who spoke up so far about it.
I personally don't need to wait.
Okay.
That's me.
Well, when we get to that.
I mean, in general, I agree with the notion that we should, with new information coming in, not necessarily act the same day. Is there any way to, well, I don't like the wait of 3 weeks either with something that is on a tight timeline as it is. But I do agree, Jeff.
Normally, we try to do that.
But I mean, with everything going on in the district at the end of the year stuff, I don't see how we would even fit in another meeting.
And the structure is built off of the original contract, and the addendum is built off of that. So a lot of this is just reflective of that, and then the timeline of what we have. Like when you go to the action, when there's a discussion, then you
Okay. The food service renewal, this is the first time we are discussing it. We will not be taking an action on it.
It's our recommendation that we renew our contract for food service with Arbor Management Incorporated for the 2017-18 school year. The way that food service contracts typically work is they're bid every 5 years. They're a series of one-year renewals. If you're satisfied with the vendor, you move forward with the renewal based upon the original contract dictates our CPIU, or food away from home, so as the guiding principle behind the rate increases. The vendor does need to clarify the reasoning behind the increase if it is necessary. It's not automatic, and it must be justified by the vendor and approved by the state. Attached are the documents related to the renewal. The proposed increase is 2.3%, which is the CPIU food away from home. As you can see, the Arbor has justified their increase by looking at their cost based on justifications related to commodity costs, beef, cheese, chicken, canned fruits, and such. Many of those costs are well over the 2.3% threshold, so it seems reasonable, the 2.3% increase for the 17-18 school year. our rate along all lines for breakfast, lunch, a la carte equivalent meals would go up by that 2.3%. And we're looking for action at the June, first board meeting in June.
For Brad?
So everything's working well with them?
Yeah, we're happy with their service and their management. They're very,
Like the light?
they react well to our needs. If we have any issues with them, we address them with them, and they're dealt with in a timely fashion. We've been getting good response from them. I've gotten several compliments from many of our principals in dealing with our general manager. We're very happy with them. So overall, yeah, I'd say we're satisfied with their performance. We're always working to improve and address any additional needs that the students might have. But I'd say overall, we're very.
On a personal level, my kids are satisfied.
Yes, I was just going to say my daughter's a very picky eater, eats lunch at school every day.
Nacho Supreme, baby. They love it.
Those are important things. We want your children to be happy because it's typically reflective of the other students in the district. So we'll continue to have them strive for improvement, and they're always looking to build participation. That's how they make their money, is by increasing the meal counts and by increasing participation. So they're doing everything they can to do that.
I just had a quick question. I know during when we approved our increase in our
milk
fees and the milk, so that isn't reflected, because now with the new thing that we have to do, or would we have to increase it, or no, that took care of
It's not related to the contract itself. We set that outside the parameters. Their contract is based upon the CPI. Our increases in our costs, our increases on our fees that we charge for lunch are related to the price equity tool that is put out by the Healthy Hunger Kids Act, and that's required that we evaluate each year to make sure we're in compliance with that. So that's outside the scope of this, but we do have a price increase unrelated to this.
No, but that's why I'm meaning,
And
now that their prices and stuff renewal came in, would we have to go out and increase our prices again just to
No.
match with them or anything
No.
of that sort? That's
No,
what I meant.
We're in good shape with our
Okay.
our profit and loss program.
Okay, so that's what I meant. Okay, that concludes the discussion items. Now to the action items. The first action item is the Dell Technology lease. Do we have any discussion about it that has not been discussed at all already? No. Do I have somebody make a motion?
I move that the Board of Education approve the lease from Dell Financial Services LLC to enter into an equipment lease purchase agreement whereby the district leases computer equipment pursuant to Section 10-22-25A of the School Code, and that the Board of Education would consider adoption of a resolution providing for the approval of such equipment lease purchase agreement.
I have a second.
Second.
Motion by Robin, seconded by Jeff. Could we get a roll call vote, please?
Jason Tron,
Aye.
Julie Simpson, Jeff Bard,
Aye.
Robin Cleek,
Aye.
Wes Pullen, Matt Jacobs,
Aye.
Sonali Patil.
Aye.
Okay.
Motion passes 7 ayes, 0 nays.
Just take one moment and say congratulations. It's been quite a journey to get to here. That actually is a bigger vote than you might think. The infrastructure's there. Thank you to Dimitri and his team. And now we've leased the devices to go to one-to-one. It's a brand new experience for our students next year. So congratulations. I just wanted to note, it's not just a lease. It indicates a much bigger conclusion of a project. So we appreciate your support.
Are you going to memorialize the first kid who gets that first
We're gonna
Chromebook?
take pictures, tweet it
On
at
the wall.
We're gonna actually engrave all of our names on that Chromebook.
In gold.
Okay. The next one is, next motion is 6-235, access to electronic networks. Any discussion? We already discussed for adding the word staff to students and staff, right?
Right.
That was for inappropriate use. So we'll make the motion. So anybody want to make a motion?
I move that the Board of Education approve policy 6:235, access to electronic network, as presented with the addition of the words "and staff" to item 2 under Internet Safety, to state, restrict student and staff access to inappropriate matter, as well as restricting access to harmful material.
Second.
Motion by Jason, seconded by Robin. Can I get a voice vote? Can be a voice.
All those in favor?
All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? 7 ayes, 0 nays. Next action item, summer work 2017. Any discussion? Any further discussion? Do I have a motion, please?
I move that the Board of Education approve Construction Consulting and Disbursement Services, Inc. to provide accessibility improvements, life safety improvements, exterior refinishing, interior refinishing, and mechanical equipment replacement at the district office, Elementary North, Middle North, Town Line Elementary, John Powers Center, Middle South, and Aspen Elementary Schools in the amount of $478,000.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion by Robin, seconded by Matt. Could I get a roll call vote, please?
Jason Tron.
Aye.
Julie Simpson.
Aye.
Jeff Bard.
Aye.
Robin Cleek.
Aye.
West Poland, aye. Matt Jacobs.
Aye.
Sonali Patel.
Aye. Motion passes 7 ayes, 0 nays. The next action item is Press 94. Any discussions? What's the question? Sorry. As
I think you
presented
just,
and what's the
as presented, with the noted option.
second?
No, I don't think you have to. I think you need to say as presented with the noted option.
I'm going to make the motion. I make the motion that the Board of Education approve Press 94 as presented with the noted options. Do I have a second?
Wait, what noted options? You say it out.
That would work.
It's got to be in the record. The
As
noted
previously
options is not clear.
Well, as discussed prior in this meeting.
Yes.
If you took notes.
I will discuss it.
be clear on what
With the
motion we're
noted
approving.
options of in policy number 3-70, which was succession of authority, the board would want to have an approval of the succession plan submitted by the superintendent. The next one was 4-15, which was identity 4-15 identity protection. On the advice of the legal counsel, we do not want to add any more notification requirements for breaches in the security. And the last policy was 7-100, which is health, eye, and dental examination, immunizations, and exclusions of students. The board chose not to add any options to the reflected policy, but we will
We'll make procedures.
make procedural changes. Can I get a second?
Second.
Motion by Sonali, seconded by Robin. Can I, all in favor?
Aye.
7 ayes, 0 nay.
Gotta ask.
Oh, any opposed? No. 7 ayes, 0 nays, sorry. The next action item is anticipated 2017-2018 teacher positions. Any discussion?
Can we clearly identify what those positions are?
Yeah, I'm bringing that up right now to. This one. Thank you for your patience. At the previous board meeting, we discussed permission to post anticipated. We are now asking for permission to have these become actual positions. The anticipated positions for the board was one bilingual position at Elementary North in 5th grade, one PE position at Middle School South, a .5 art, and a .5 music to be shared between Elementary North and Aspen. In the special ed department, we had 1 LBS1 at Town Line. We had 2.5 LBS1s at Middle School South. All special ed teachers are LBS1, so .5 LBS1 for resource, a 1.0 for LOP, and then a 1.0 LBS1 for resource again. We asked for 1 LBS1 at Elementary South, 1 LBS1 at Elementary North for the LOP program, 1 OT, which would be paid for out of the grant, and 1 special ed instructional aid for dual language, again paid for out of the grant.
Any discussions?
And then there were some other positions where if the need materializes, you'll come back and ask.
Yes, if you, would you like me to review
No.
those? Just okay, yeah, because we do have other positions built in.
Any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I move that the Board of Education approve the anticipated teacher positions as presented.
Motion by, do I have a second?
Second.
Motion by Robin, seconded by Jeff.
I don't know if it's a roll call. Yeah?
Could I have a roll call vote, please?
Jason Tron,
Aye.
Julie Simpson,
Aye.
Jeff Bard,
Aye.
Robin Cleek,
Aye.
Wes Poland, aye. Matt Jacobs,
Aye.
Sonali Patel.
Aye. Motion passes 7 ayes, 0 nays. The next action item is intergovernmental agreement for the kindergarten center at the Sullivan Center. Any discussions?
Just quickly, this is the intergovernmental agreement actually let you move forward with that project. We couldn't do anything until this was finalized because you could be expending money or something. This is the agreement that lets us build that partnership.
I just want to double check that the Park District is firm on all points.
I'm sorry?
The Park District is firm on all points, correct?
Yes.
There's nothing that's negotiable.
No, I checked with them today.
When will they pass? Did they already vote on it?
25th is when their next board meeting is.
Can I have a motion?
I move that the Board of Education approve the intergovernmental agreement for the kindergarten center at the Sullivan Center as presented.
Second?
Second.
Motion by Jeff, seconded by Matt. Can I get a roll call vote, please?
Jason Tron,
Aye.
Julie Simpson,
Abstain.
Jeff Bard,
Aye.
Robin Cleek,
Aye.
Wes Poland, aye. Matt Jacobs,
Aye.
Sonali Patel.
Ayes. 6 ayes, 1
Abstain.
One abstention.
And another moment to just say congratulations on that. That's a very big step to the next, trying to resolve some of our space issues.
The next action item is DLR group addendum. Any discussion?
So just to be clear on the phases, can we make it so that it's approved, but that we don't proceed to the next phase without board approval to go to the next phase? So like you presented, what's that?
It's already in your master agreement.
Okay, because it didn't appear that way in the addendum to the master agreement.
Correct, it's in the master.
Okay.
Do I have a motion?
Yeah. I move that the Board of Education approve the DLR group addendum as presented.
Motion by Jason, seconded by Sonali. Can I have a roll call vote, please?
Jason Tron,
Aye.
Julie Simpson,
Aye.
Jeff Bard,
Aye.
Robin Cleek,
Aye.
Wes Poland, aye. Matt Jacobs,
Aye.
Sonali Patel.
Aye. The motion passes 7 ayes, 0 nays. That's it for today's action items. We have the President's Report. So in the President's Report, the middle school awards night is Thursday, May 25th at 7 p.m. At the respective schools. And Thursday, June 1st is the promotion ceremony, Middle North is at 6 p.m. Middle South is at 8 p.m. at Vernon Hills High School. Jeff has kindly agreed to be the promotion speaker at the Middle North ceremony.
Thanks, Jeff.
Everybody owes me.
You really took one for the team.
As long as it's not me.
And I'll do it at Middle South. So
Yay!
I'll be there at Middle South.
Years ago.
And that's it from me.
Okay, couple of highlights quick for us. Middle School North State Track Meet was held on Saturday. 8th grade dance was held on Friday. I think that was also at Middle School South as well. We had quite a few dances going on. The following students at Middle School South qualified for the annual state track and field competition. Girls, Brooke Donaldson, Taylor Proft, Erica Bunning, and Rosa Sheridan. Boys, Sam Atade, Oscar Jedniak, John Lee, Shane Moncayo, Alex Utsis, Chase Bonder, Luke Lutgen, and Cameron Symes. Also, if I'm not mistaken, Middle School South had an undefeated soccer season this year, so congratulations. Great job for the coach and the players. Activity highlights 523, Town Line Dual Language 4th and 5th grade band concert at the Town Line Gym at 7 p.m. On the 23rd at Aspen Elementary South, 4th and 5th grade orchestra concert at the Aspen Gym at 7 p.m. 524 is the Elementary North Band concert at 7 p.m. And on 524, Middle North and Middle South Spring Athletic Awards ceremony at 7 p.m. We're rocking and rolling around here this time of year. Lots going on. 525 is Elementary North, Town Line, and Dual Language 4th and 5th grade orchestra concerts at the Town Line Gym at 7 p.m. On 525, Middle North and Middle South 8th grade awards night, Middle North Gym and Middle South Gym, respectively, at 7 p.m. 526, Institute Day, no school for all students, but staff will be here, and that is also when we do our recognition of our retirees in the morning. 529, Memorial Day, no school for students, holiday for everybody. 6-1, 8th grade promotion, as pointed out, at Vernon Hills High School, Middle School North is at 6, Middle School South is at 7, and you do have, at 8, 6 and 8, well, we could start early. Make sure you look in your packet, you do have a little parking information in there, and if you have any questions, feel free to email me or Wendy, and we'll make sure to direct you to the right location. It does get crowded for parking, so you don't want to be there just right at 6, or you'll be parking somewhere and climbing a fence and trying to get in. So
But the red pass gets you in.
Yeah.
It does, but it's still busy. It
Yeah,
took
it's
me a
very
while to
busy.
even get to a cop
Right,
last time.
right.
Nick, that recognition of the retirees and stuff like that, typically we've gone to that the last couple of years. Are we still
Yes.
invited to that? What time is it?
Yes, I apologize. I'll send out information with you for the details, but it is Friday in the morning. I'll send an email to you with a good time to be there for that recognition.
Okay.
And Sonali is on the agenda to say a few kind words for the folks. It's always a nice celebration of what their work is. And then June 7th is our tentative last day, as long as we don't get any snow. Hurricanes, things like that. Well,
Hey,
it's been-
you never know.
We went warm, went cold. I don't know. So thank you very much. And again, from my staff, we'd like to thank the board for the support this evening. There were quite a few items. They're actually big items and moving in the right direction. So thank you very much.
Oh, before we adjourn, any future discussions? We forgot.
Yes, I've got one.
Oh.
So now that we're moving forward with the kindergarten at Sullivan Center, should we be a little more intentional with our naming and what we're going to call this building, so that we don't have to always call it Kindergarten Center at the Sullivan Center? Maybe
Jason
something-
Tron Center, what do you mean?
No, do not put my name on there at all. Just something to think about as to, what we might want to.
I'll bring some suggested ways to
and
do
how
that.
the board wants to discuss it and determine what we want to do with it.
Maybe contest between schools?
I'm sorry?
A
Maybe
contest to name it?
between-
Yeah,
That'd be
that's a
cool.
great idea.
Naming rights.
Student input.
If we can get Nike to pay for it, then be the Nike. I'm in.
It's the CDW Center.
That's right.
$12 million, I might consider that.
Right.
Any other future topics? Oh, we wanted to go and James was looking over the space issues. We had talked about a couple meetings ago, the space, and he was trying to see, what could be done at Middle North and Middle South to repurpose some rooms if we had and how much it was going to cost us to repurpose rooms. So if we could have a discussion about that soon, because before the school opens.
Yeah, we have
Makes
some.
sense.
We have some locations if we needed a portable or
Yeah,
not. So
that's
I'll-
what. So
what it would-
I know
yes.
James was doing
Yes,
that,
yes.
and
I'll bring that to you.
we were going to have a discussion of the E EFMP.
Yes.
Anything else? Anybody?
When are we expecting, I feel like I've been told this before and I forgot, when are we expecting feedback on why people voted the way they did for or against the referendum?
And finalizing the survey to get that out to folks, and I would hope that, I want to leave it open for a period of time.
Right.
Capture folks, so I would hope that we can have that back mid-July, maybe, to then have a conversation for deciding what's the next step.
Okay.
And then we'll have a discussion of the schematic design process.
Yes, the discussion of the team that we are putting together for the
Okay.
whatever we are going to call this team now. Not the core
Yeah,
team.
right,
It's
no, right,
kindergarten
right.
team.
We'll figure it out.
The team for the schematic. Would you? We'll know on the 25th, right? They'll email us. They'll let us know.
Yeah. Mhm. Yeah, in fact, I'm going to text their director as soon as we're done. And do not expect any changes from them. They're good as far as that. Okay. Adjourn?
That's it. Yes.
All
Make
right.
a motion to adjourn. Have a motion.
I move that we adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Robin, seconded by Julie. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? 7 ayes, 0 nays.
Do you want a hard copy of the addendum that's the red line addendum that was actually approved this evening?